All right, well, welcome again, everybody. My name is Alex. I'm going to be hosting today's webinar, and today's topic is going to be on year-end closing procedures for churches and nonprofits. So it is November. As we kind of round the 2016 year, we get to the end. There are a number of things that churches and nonprofits will need to keep in mind and do or complete by the end of the year so that you are compliant, you got everything kind of tied in a knot, and you're good to go for the new year. So my name is Alex. There I am. Hi, I'm Alex. I do a number of things around here, but kind of my main role is I head up our services department. I also help out with support and product management, and then just kind of overall, I'm kind of the video and the webinar guy. So you've probably seen or heard my voice before, and happy to be with you here today. So again, today we're going through year-end closing procedures. So this webinar is going to help you basically get started in reviewing your organization's accounting and donations management and basically all your kind of back office system kind of stuff for the end of the year and then preparing for the 2017 year. Just a quick note, accounting software might have stuff in place to assist you with some of these things, specifically Aplos, the company that we work for here. We have accounting and donation software, which I'll shamelessly plug at the end of our time here today. But a lot of what we do will help with a lot of these processes kind of on the accounting and donation side. But some of this stuff needs to be done outside of your software as well. All right. So today we're going to cover 4 basic categories of year-end things, and those are year-end reminders, year-end transactions, year-end reviews, and year-end tax forms. And some of this stuff is mentioned a couple of times. So if you see, if you hear me talk about the same thing twice, it's just because it falls within 2 different categories. But hopefully it makes sense. And then at the end, I'll tell you how Aplos can make this process simple as well. All right, so let's go ahead and start with year-end reminders, okay? So the first thing, as you round the end of the year, these reminders are either reminders that you need to send or things you just need to remind yourself of to make sure that everything's kind of tied, together at the end of the year. So the first one here is housing allowance. So faith-based organizations designate the housing allowances for ministers for the upcoming year. So if you are a church and you have a pastor that gets a housing allowance, this is a time for you to kind of reevaluate that, make sure that the amount is correct, that everything has been paid out for the year, and that as you look through, to the next year, everything is kind of lined out accordingly as well. So if there's any adjustments that you need to do, you would make those now, or at least prepare to do so now. The next thing here is W-2s. So for all your employees, whether you're a church or a nonprofit, you need to remind employees to review their W-4 and confirm that the information is correct. So if they've moved or if they've updated their contact information or if they need to be reclassified, if they're a different type of employee or if they need to change their withholding amounts, now is a great time to do that. So if you have employees to touch base with, do that. And then also a notice to donors. So this is, we're going to talk about this here in a little bit as well, but notice to donors. So remind donors to wait to file taxes until they've received their contribution summary. A lot of people get kind of antsy at the end of the year and want to file their personal taxes, but they can't do so until they have their contribution statements from you and other people that they donate to. You have until January 31st. So in order for you to kind of close out your donations for the 2016 year, get the donors their financial statements and, present that information to them, you have until the end of January. So now as you kind of look to the end of the year, now might be a good time to just send out a reminder to say, hey, just by the way, we're still accepting donations for the 2016 year up until December 31st. So get your year-end donations in there, but don't file your taxes until we've given you your contribution summary, because otherwise you'll have to do an amendment, and that's not fun. So yeah, and also if you have time, you might want to send them an advanced statement. Again, asking for a year-end donation or just reminding them of how much they've donated. Studies have shown that if you remind people how much they've given, they will end up giving more. So that's not a nudge from us to say, go, try to squeeze as much money as possible out of your donors. But some donors might have just forgotten, or they might be thinking, you know what, I'd like to donate a little bit more towards the end of the year. You might as well ask. You don't get it unless you ask. So it's a good time to send out that kind of reminder. Also, Christmas gifts. So some people like gifts. I think most people like gifts. But some gifts to ministers, employees, or volunteers may be considered taxable income. So handle these carefully and note them as needed. Meaning, if you give them a Starbucks card, they don't need to, consider that a, taxable income. But if you give them a year-end bonus or some sort of, I don't know, bonus package or some sort of, large gift, whatever it might be. Some of those things might be considered taxable income to them in their individual tax return. So again, kind of just think through that. If there's, any legal ramifications to it, be sure to research it and figure out what the right way to handle that approach might be. But yeah. So that's kind of it for year-end reminders. So again, these are things that either people need reminders of or that you need to remind yourself of. Again, housing allowance, make sure that that's all lined up for the new year and that you've taken care of everything for the current year. Make sure W-4s are up to date for all of your employees. And if they need to make any changes, have them do so now. A notice to donors, make sure that they are communicated with to let them know that they can still donate through the end of the year, but they want to wait until they file their taxes in order for them to have their full contribution statement, as well as any Christmas gifts that need to be documented differently. All right. So year-end transactions. This is where the fun accounting stuff comes in. Donations. So input all donations that were received or postmarked by December 31st of the closing year. Okay, so this is most likely you're doing this kind of through the end of the year, but then also in January. Again, you have until January 31st to issue the contribution statements. So you've got a little bit of a window of time there to catch up from the closing of the year. But anything that's been postmarked or given to you before December 31st is considered 2016 income. If someone gives you a donation that says this is the year-end donation, but they give it to you January 2nd, kind of no way around that. That is now a January donation, now a 2017 year donation. So if you want to get that stuff in by the end of the year, make sure to remind your donors to do so that anything postmarked, again, by December 31st will be counted in the right year. Reimbursements. So note any year-end business expenses that you are owed or that you owe someone else. So this is kind of a, in general, accounting, mental check thing to keep in mind. If you're owed any money, make sure that you have all of that documented and that you give that to your employer or whoever owes you money so that you can get your reimbursements by the end of the year, as well as if you owe someone, make sure that you get their reimbursements in by the end of the year as well. Payroll. Make sure that you enter all payroll and related taxes, retirement, flex spending, or insurance. Now, payroll gets fun as well because you are ending the year maybe in the middle of a pay cycle. I'm not exactly sure how everybody runs their payroll, but it's possible that you are accruing some sort of taxes or retirement or that kind of thing that will span the pay period spans 2016, 2017. So make sure your payroll is up to date. If you need to do some sort of mid-year closing entry to kind of wrap things up for the 2016 and then carry the balance over to 17 for the new pay period, just make sure that all is taken care of. If you're using a payroll either service or a software, they might again already do that for you, or at least help with it. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Make sure that you're compliant there. Bookkeeping. So overall, just in general, bookkeeping, housekeeping, transaction entry, make sure that your revenue and your expenses have been received prior to the year end and are accounted for prior to closing the books. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with what that process looks like, if you're using a software that requires you to close the books, basically you'll enter all of the information for the previous year in January because you got to wait for the year to close, but you'll enter all of your contributions, all of your income, all of your expenses for the 2016 year, and then you do what's called closing the books, which involves you kind of zeroing out your income and expense accounts to wrap everything up into equity and your fund balances at the end of the year, with software that is not often needed. So for instance, with Aplos, you don't need to do any sort of closing entry to close the books, but you still want to make sure that everything has been entered. Again, not super time sensitive, so you don't need to have it done by December 31st, because what happens if you spend some money on December 31st? Well, you have to wait a couple days to get that wrapped up. So really in the month of January is when we're thinking here to just make sure that all things are entered for the right date so that they're in the right period. All of your bank balances are kept up to date, and you're good to close the books for 2016. So day-to-day ops. So this kind of wraps up just in general, if you have normal month-end things that you do, so like bank reconciliations, or if you run certain reports, or if there are fund transfers that you do on a monthly basis, just all of those kind of monthly normal things that you go through throughout the year, make sure to keep that up to date in December as well. Really, year-end closing and month-end closing are not super different. One is just closing a month, and one is kind of wrapping up for a year. But if you've been doing month-end closing procedures for all, January through November, then December shouldn't be too much different, and you probably won't need to do a ton different to actually close out the whole year if you've been keeping up to date on a monthly basis. All right. So again, year-end transactions. So make sure that the bookkeeping is up to date. So your donations are entered for the right date. So don't cheat it. If you get a donation in January, it's a January donation. Reimbursements. Make sure that you turn in all of your reimbursements that the year owed, or at least pay people that need reimbursement as well. Make sure that payroll is kept up to date, and that if you're kind of spanning 2 different years in a pay period, that all of the correct entries are made for that. Bookkeeping, again, and day-to-day ops, just kind of make sure that everything is wrapped up, entered, funds and bank balances are all transferred. Everything is kind of, cleanly wrapped up as of the end of December. All right. So year-end reviews. Now, these things are, either future-looking or previous-looking. So, for instance, annual reports. So run annual reports to check for accuracy that all accounts balance. If you've been doing this on a monthly basis, again, you might not have to do a ton of adjustment here. But if you're doing some catch-up work, or if the year's been particularly crazy, or December's been a big month, you might want to just look at an annual report. Make sure that your year-to-date income and expense makes sense. If you have a really big, loss, or if you've got a negative value somewhere that looks odd, then now is the time to research that and make any kind of entries that are needed to correct those. And once you do adjusting entries, so if you need to reclassify anything, or catch up and do some bookkeeping work there, make sure to rerun reports once you've done that. So that way, once you've got everything buttoned up, everything's reconciled, everything's done for the year, you've now got a comprehensive and accurate set of financial statements that you can either share with your board or staff or whomever needs it, or that you can print and file for your record, or on a hard drive, whatever you use. Also review that your asset and liability balances are correct, and that they are presented accurately, and that they make sense. So make sure that your bank recs are done and are complete and accurate when compared with your bank. So cash balances are very important to keep up to date with on an ongoing basis, but especially at the end of the year. And then all other assets and liabilities are entered and up to date. And what I mean by that is now is a good time to review, I think we're going to talk about this here in just a minute, but your overall kind of account and foundational accounting system kind of structure. But now is a good time to also reevaluate, well, we haven't maybe been tracking this building that we own for the past year, but maybe we should. Well, I agree. Maybe you should. That kind of stuff. If you've got assets or debt or something that you haven't been tracking maybe either at all or enough, make sure that those are factored in as well. Because really, when you start the new year, even if it's not your fiscal period, January through December, starting a new calendar year with a good foundation is extremely important and very useful, because then if you don't, and you maybe tuck it into the back of your mind, like, well, I'll track the building later, or this car or something, it's going to get to March and April, and then now you're going to have to do backtrack entry. And so it's just a lot cleaner and a lot easier to do it at the end of the year. So that way everything is taken care of, everything's up to date, you are accurate, you are GAAP compliant, and that way you don't need to do a bunch of catch-up work in the middle of the year. Okay, so asset and liability balances are up to date, entered, accurate, so on and so forth. Fund balances. Churches and nonprofits have funds, and we at Aplos specialize in fund accounting software. Not exactly sure what you currently use, but if you're using an accounting system at all, even if it's just a massive, Excel spreadsheet that you're keeping together, make sure that your fund balances are accurate and that they are all presented. So this is of equal importance as the asset and liabilities. Funds are basically allocations of what you have towards something specific, right? So you have things like unrestricted funds. So this is what a lot of people call a general fund or an administrative fund. Essentially, it's money that you are either given or earn that goes into an unrestricted bucket, which means you can spend it kind of however you see fit. Now, other fund balances are restricted. So this could be from a grant that says, here is, $5,000 and we want it to be spent in these specific ways, or a grant that says, this is for a certain purpose. Or if someone gives you money saying, I want this to be allocated towards your, building campaign or your missions fund, anything like that, you want to make sure that all of that is not only created in your accounting structure so that you've got it, but that all your fund balances are right as well. I'll use an example from Aplos, and something that our customers run into quite often is on one side you're receiving donations. And let's say you're, receiving contributions online and through check, and maybe you've got a little bit of revenue too from selling, t-shirts or something. But maybe all of the income has been classified to a general fund, even if it's restricted somewhere else. But meanwhile, you're recording expenses out of the funds that are restricted. Well, what this creates is it creates a very large general fund balance and a negative fund balance for all the other stuff that has expenses recorded towards it. So we see that actually quite a bit. We help a lot of our customers clean that up. So that kind of stuff, if you've been receiving money for something specific, or that you want to tuck away for something specific, make sure that all of those fund balances are correct. If you need to do adjusting entries and go back and kind of reallocate things, then now is the time to do it. Because again, kind of going into the new year is a critical time to make sure that everything is present and accounted for and accurate. So as well as your assets and liabilities, your fund balances are one of those things that you really want to make sure you have buttoned up by the end of the year. So that way you can budget accordingly, and you can enter the new year having an accurate set of books. A little note here, this also might be a good time to reevaluate your fund accounting structure to make sure things are being tracked as needed. So I kind of mentioned that, but overall, your whole chart of accounts, your whole accounting structure. So am I tracking my funds correctly? I have departments. Am I tracking those correctly? I have locations. I have teams. I have projects. I have fundraisers. I have all these different things maybe that you want to track, but maybe haven't been doing so as much as you want to. Now is, again, a fantastic time to reevaluate that, figure out what to do going forward to make sure that you've got all of the things that you need in order to get your reports for the coming year. So jumping off my horse there for fund balances there for a minute. So account signatories, make sure that all account signatories are still valid, meaning people that have access to accounts or that can sign off on accounts or checks. Make sure that all those things are still up to date and valid. Healthcare, make sure that your enrollment is taken care of for the year, or sometimes you have maybe open enrollment is in March or something like that. But just make sure that healthcare is somewhat taken care of. A lot of these things really boil down to just make it a mental note to make sure that there's nothing you need to do. So if you got a healthcare notice about, changing policies or that action needs to be taken, and you've put it onto your desk, and then you got something else and put that paper on top of it, now's a good time to just go through that stack and make sure that all your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted for the year. And then internal controls. So internal controls are things that an organization puts into place in order to make sure that your kind of operations are running smoothly, that your reporting is accurate, and that you are compliant with any regulatory agencies you need to keep up with. So IRS or GAAP, FASB, whatever you need to keep adherent to. So if you're not familiar with internal controls, we can provide you some documentation on that. But if you are familiar with what internal controls are, now is a good time to review those things to make sure that they're working properly, that they're present where it need to be present. Just again, kind of a mental check to make sure that everything is good there. Okay. And then I think this is the last note. No, budget preparation. So again, looking towards the 2017 year, this is most likely something you're going to want to get done before you get closer to January, because come January, you're going to be recording income and expenses that are a part of your budget. So here being in November and then going into December, now is an excellent time to do your budget prep for the coming year. So prepare your budget for the upcoming year, enter it into your accounting system if it has a budgeting module of sorts. And again, I kind of jump back on my horse there and say it's a great time to review your chart of accounts and make any changes desired before entering the new year. Another example of what our customers typically run into is maybe you've got accounts that you thought you were going to use, but then you didn't, or accounts that you did use in excess, and maybe you need to break out into more detail. With assets, possessions, with debt, with liabilities, and with funds, those are things that you want to make sure that are present and accounted for, because those represent actual real balances somewhere. So either you have a balance and you need to track it, or you owe a balance and you need to track it. Those things are more material, whereas income and expense is more boiled down to your reporting on how you get money and how you spend money. So those income and expense accounts have a lot more fluctuation, a lot more ebb and flow with just how stylistically, how do you run your organization, and what do you want to see on your report at the end of the year. So if it's getting to the end of 2016 and you're looking at an income statement thinking, man, this doesn't have as much detail as I want, or man, there's a ton of accounts here that we don't need. Both of those mental notes are a good foundation for making some changes. And feel free to make changes. Your chart of accounts is yours. Every organization is different. There will be common themes. So most people need, rent or office supplies or, a certain, contributions income, those kinds of categories. But the number of accounts and the way that you track them, whether they're broad accounts or very minute specific accounts, that is all unique to your organization. And really, again, it all boils down to what you want to see on a report. So when you look at an income statement for a month or a week or a year, and you want to see how much money did I make and how did I make it, and then how much money did I spend and how did I spend it, those are your income and expense accounts that you want to kind of reevaluate here at the end of the year. So feel free to make changes. Once you've got those changes made, then budget, because your budget works off of those accounts. So kind of reevaluate your income and account structure, and then develop your budget, put that into your accounting system, and that should set you on a good pace there for the new year. Insurance policies. So again, kind of in the same vein as healthcare, but just make sure that your insurance policies are up to date and that they're adequate for your organization's needs. Again, might have been one of those papers that you got in the mail that you put onto your desk and then have now forgotten about, or you've thought, well, maybe we should increase our limit or something like that. So just a mental note to make sure that your insurance policies are valid. All right. So that is year-end reviews, the largest part of our webinar here, year-end reviews. So again, annual reports, make sure that you are running reports for your organization to identify any errors or mistakes or corrections that need to be made, make them, and then rerun your reports. Make sure that your assets, liabilities, and funds are all present and accounted for properly, and how you expect to see them and how you need to see them for any external reporting you need to do. Make sure that your account signatories are up to date and valid. Same with healthcare and insurance policies. Do a review of your internal controls to make sure that your operational structure is how do I say it? I guess transparent. I guess the whole point of internal controls is to make sure that what you're doing is accurate for your accounting, that you're complying with regulatory agencies to track things the way you need to. You've got transparency. You're kind of above reproach. So make sure your internal controls are up to date, and then budget prep. So make sure to edit your income and expense accounts. Make sure those are still making sense for your organization, and then develop your budget once you've got that done as well. Okay, so the last category here is year-end tax forms, and this one will be pretty short. Again, W-4 here, make sure that all your W-4 forms are up to date for each employee, and note any changes that need to be made. 1099s. 1099s are forms that you need to give to any non-salaried people that you've paid throughout the year. There are thresholds and guidelines that go along with that. So if you have questions, the best resource is the IRS to just make sure that you've got the right threshold, that you're meeting the right requirements there. But make sure that your IRS Form 1099s and 1096s are done by January 31st. You have until January 31st to button those up. And also a note, these forms have to be purchased. I inevitably get this question all the time on, can I download these forms? And to my knowledge, you can't. I could be wrong, and I most often am. But to my knowledge, your forms have to be purchased. So you have to go to some sort of Office Depot or Office Max and get those forms. I don't know. I think some softwares might be able to e-file them. We can't, but there might be something out there that you can do. But again, to my knowledge, these are paper forms that need to be purchased and completed by January 31st. And then contribution statements. Again, just a reminder that these are due by January 31st as well. So make sure to send those out as early as possible in January, just so that you're done. We inevitably get a number of people that, for whatever reason, whether it's scheduling or I don't know, backlog, but it gets to, January 28th, and they're having to enter a full 12 months worth of donations and get those things out. So you want to be done as quickly as possible, not only for your own mental health, but also it allows you some margin for error and correction if need be. So, if you send somebody a contribution statement, January 28th, but then you missed, a couple of things, they're going to write back to you and say, you missed some stuff and now you're behind in your deadline. So if you get those out as early as possible, maybe by the first or second week of January, that allows kind of a cushion so that if anybody has feedback or something that, needs to be corrected, you can do so and still have everybody done by January 31st. All right. So again, I'm not sure if I meant to put W-4 or W-2, but both of those forms, make sure that they're up to date. Make sure that your 1099s are up to date as well, that you've gotten all those things issued to those non-salaried compensation people for the year due by January 31st, as well as contribution statements for all of your donors. All right. So that is our year-end closing procedures webinar. There is a ton of information in there, and I ramble on quite a bit. Just to address some of those questions now, this webinar was recorded, and we will share it with you so that you can watch it again. And we also do have a checklist, a PDF checklist that you can use if you want to just have something to check off for those achievers out there. But as a review, we've covered some year-end reminders, so things that you either need to remind people of or remind yourself of as this year wraps up, so that you go into the new year kind of with all your boxes checked there. Year-end transactions, so make sure that your bookkeeping and your just overall data entry is up to date and taken care of. Your year-end review, so make sure that your accounting system has been reviewed, that all assets and funds and liabilities and income and expense accounts are created and accurate and present and accounted for, and then any sort of operational reviews like health insurance and internal controls and insurance and that kind of thing. Make sure that those are all reviewed as well. And then year-end tax forms, 1099s, contribution statements, and then the W-4 or W-2, whichever one. Make sure those are done as well. One thing I didn't mention is that the 990 is something that applies to organizations as well. But that is based off of your fiscal year. So that is due the 15th day of the 5th month of your fiscal year. Again, that's the 15th day of the 5th month of your fiscal year. A lot of F-sounding things in there. So if you run on a January through December fiscal year, your 990 form for nonprofits is due by May 15th. If you're a different fiscal year, then you'll have to do the math because I'm terrible with months there. But that's not something that you necessarily need to do right now if you don't run on a calendar year fiscal year. So just keep that in mind. And for the 990, if you're an organization under $50,000, you'll file the 990N form. If you're anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 of income, you're going to file the 990EZ. And then if you're anything over $200,000, then you're going to file the full form 990. And there are a number of exceptions and different schedules that you need to file with that. So if you have any questions, we recommend reaching out to either us or the foundation group or a tax professional to make sure that you've got everything there. Alrighty, so year-end reminders, year-end transactions, year-end reviews, year-end tax forms, and my shameless plug, how Aplos can help do all this stuff, or at least keep things somewhat organized for you. Our kind of mantra is we want to keep things simple. Aplos, the word Aplos actually means simple in Greek, and that's what we aim to be. So we have a couple of things that can help you out as this year closes. We have first accounting software. We have a number of products, but our kind of flagship here is our fund accounting software. that we specialize in. And Aplos can easily track your funds, departments, fundraisers, projects, campuses, and really anything else that you need to track. Any other kind of category that you need to have present on a report, we can keep track of that for you. We can provide you software that does that. And some benefits of using us for year-end closing procedures specifically are we do not require closing entries. So there's no entry that you need to do at the end of the year to close out your income and expense accounts to wrap them up into your equity for the new year. That is done automatically for you. There is no closing of accounts. So kind of in the same vein, you don't need to close accounts and kind of post adjusting entries to zero those things out. That'll be done automatically. No end of year adjustments. 1099 tracking. We have 1099 tracking as well, so that you can track who you owe, who you've paid, what the threshold is there, what category of 1099 they fall into. And then we have a way for you to print the 1099s and 1096 forms. Again, if you've purchased the paper from a store, we can print all the information on there for you. So that way you just have to put it in the mail and get it out there by January 31st. And then we also have powerful reporting. So again, most of accounting boils down to setting up some sort of foundational structure through your chart of accounts, which incorporates funds and departments and tags and all that kind of thing. So setting that kind of structure, you then input transactions using that structure for the eventual goal of pulling reports. And that is kind of accounting. So because we can allow you to track funds, departments, and all those different categories, we have some pretty powerful reports. So no more adjusting entries, no more contacting a CPA, no more pulling your hair out at the end of the year to figure out how much money do I have in my missions fund. That is something that we do pretty easily. So that's my shameless plug of our accounting software. We also have a donations software that is in conjunction with accounting or by itself, whatever you need there. But we have contribution management software. Now, it's admittedly not as built out as some other platforms. Again, we mainly focus on the accounting, but the donations is here as well. And that integrates with the accounting to allow you to track who gave, how much they gave, to what purpose did they give, either manual or online entry. And then you can generate contribution statements for those donors at the end of the year. So if you have need of tracking your books accurately, we've got accounting. If you also receive donations and want to have that kind of snapped in there, we have the donations as well. And then one last thing, we have professional services as well. And that, again, hi, my name is Alex. I head up our services department. And what that means is we offer accounting services for churches and nonprofits, whether they be our customers or not. If you're not a customer of ours, we will move you on to Aplos and keep track of stuff for you. So Aplos is the only software we work with, but you can be a customer of ours already, or you can not be. Either way, we can help get some of this stuff done for you. So our services department includes year-end entry and cleanup. So as we look to the end of the year, if you're thinking, man, I haven't done anything since June and I need help, we can do that. So we would work with you. We'd get all your financial statements. We would talk with you about your organization and your organizational structure, make sure that everything is created efficiently in Aplos, make sure that everything is present for the year, and then get you the reports that you need for the end of the year closing there. We also have monthly upkeep. So monthly upkeep involves us actually outsourcing your bookkeeping. Well, you're outsourcing your bookkeeping to us. We do it. And that's a monthly service that we will enter your transactions, we'll reconcile your bank, we'll make sure that your funds are kept up to date, we'll make sure that everything is coded properly, and then we'll just send you reports at the end of the month. Now, we end up talking, at least once a month just to touch bases. But for the most part, this would allow you to completely offload your bookkeeping to us. So that way you can focus on your mission. You can go out and do whatever it is that you do that kind of pushes society forward. And then we can take care of that back office accounting stuff for you. Something else we do is error or issue cleanup. So this also kind of spans whether you're a customer or not. But basically, if you have an accounting system right now, whether it be Aplos or not, and you're thinking, I am just completely over my head. We've got this issue that I have no idea how to clean up. Or like I mentioned earlier, we've got all these fund balances where some are negative, some are positive, and I need someone that can just help get this done. I'll keep up with it, but I just need help fixing some stuff. We can do that as well. Kind of what we do in all of our services here is kind of like a system audit. So if you use Aplos, we want to make sure that you're using it properly, correctly, and mostly accurately when looking at your organization. So what we do is we talk to you and we figure out, who are you? What do you do? What do you need? What are your objectives here? And then is Aplos set up in a way that's helping you accomplish those goals? So that kind of system audit will also identify areas that you could be using that maybe you aren't, or maybe you're doing something that you don't need to do. Like if you're an Aplos customer, and we have these things called we have a 990 tags, which are the full form 990 categories that you can attach to every transaction to keep up to date. Well, I've talked to a number of customers that have been doing that, but they don't even need to file the full form 990. So essentially it's pointless. So that kind of stuff. We'll try to save you some time and some headache there to make sure that you're using our system accurately with what you need to accomplish. We also offer migration services. So if you're not an Aplos customer and you would like to become one, we can help you move to Aplos. And that involves a kind of creating and again, designing your foundational accounting structure through your chart of accounts, getting that created, and then actually taking the data from your old system, whatever it might be, and plugging that into your new system of Aplos, so that you've migrated the data. You've got a couple of years in there for historical reporting, but it's all laced into this new, more efficient fund accounting structure using our software. And that's migration. And then overall, just kind of a chart of accounts design. So if you need some help, maybe reorganizing your chart of accounts for the new year, or if you have no idea what I'm talking about when I say chart of accounts, we can help with that as well. So really anything that you need from an accounting, bookkeeping perspective and a software perspective of just resolving issues or getting caught up in your accounting, we can help with all of that. So that's how Aplos can help: accounting, donations, and professional services. All right. So that is it for me and my spiel. So if you have questions, what I'd like to do now is open it up for some Q&A time. There are a number of questions that are already in the hopper here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mute myself for a couple of minutes and let you guys write some questions, and then I'll be back in just a few to get those things answered. Now, there might be something that I either don't know the answer to or that I don't have time to answer. If that happens, I'll let you know by name, and then I'll either follow up via email or point you to the right resource so that you can get that answer for you. Okay. All right. I'll be back in just a minute. Okay. First question here from Judy is, one primary question I have is, we are ending 5 years, and basically, is there anything special we need to do? Is there anything special we need to do? Well, Judy, you mentioned that you've been filing the 990N. You are under $50,000 a year in donations. So that is the correct form for you to file. But to my knowledge, there's nothing really special that you need to do at any sort of milestone of 5 or 10 or 20 years, so long as you've been keeping up with your tax returns and your reporting and any other compliance that you need to do on a yearly basis. I don't think there's anything special you need to do for 5 years. And then to piggyback on the first question, is there anything different a small 501c3 under 50 grand a year in donations needs to do differently than larger ones? And not really, no. The 990N is really the form that you need to file there. And just so it's said, the 50,000 is gross receipts, total income, 50,000 or less. If you have less than 50, let's say you have 49,000 in donations, but then you have $5,000 in revenue or grant or something like that, you've now crossed the 50,000. So just be sensitive to that. If all income is less than 50 grand, then no, you're fine. The 990N is really all you need to do there. You mentioned that you're in California. I am also in California, but I don't know of anything special you need to do with the state or any other compliance. But yeah, off the top of my head, can't think of anything. But if you've got a question or you want to double check, then tax accountants, tax CPAs are very well versed in that world. So feel free to reach out to them. Another good resource is the Foundation Group. We're partners with an organization called the Foundation Group, and they specialize in tax. They specialize in all kinds of things: nonprofit formation, nonprofit compliance, nonprofit tax, all that stuff. So if you ever need somebody, a professional, to help you with compliance things, and you're a nonprofit or a church, Foundation Group is a great resource for you. Okay. And then I might get this question a couple times, but yes, again, this webinar was recorded, and we will share it with you once we've put it onto the interwebs there. And then this PowerPoint will also be available in some form or fashion as well. We'll get that to you one way or another. Okay. Let's see. Good question here from Lori. Where can I find a good sample of internal control policies for churches? That's a fantastic question. I'd say Google is your best answer, but I think we might be able to do you one better. Our CEO and founder, Tim Getz, is a CPA, and he was also an auditor for a long time, and he's a specialist in internal controls, and he's worked for churches, and he's a master at it. And he actually has some resources that he wrote a long time ago on internal controls. I can try to get those for you if I can find them deep in my backlog of files on my computer. But another good resource is just kind of Google good internal control policies for churches. Mainly, it's going to boil down to how you handle money. So, for instance, when you count tithe, make sure that there's at least two people counting tithe, and the person that deposits the tithe into the bank is different than the people who counted it, and the people that record it into the bookkeeping is different than the person that deposited it. So all that kind of stuff. I mean, the more separation of tasks you can get within reason is usually what internal controls, a lot of it boils down to. Now, there are 1,000 different types of controls, but it's going to mainly boil down to handling money and just making sure that, reporting and entry and the handling of money is done well. Can I import information from PushPay? Not at the moment, but we do have another couple of customers that have requested that, Stephen. What I'll do is I can point that to our our integrations team, and have them research on how they can get PushPay integrated with Aplos. Okay, I'm just going to make a note of that real quick. So if you hear me shuffling around, that's what it is. Okay. Where do I get an error or issue cleanup assistant? I'm already an Aplos customer. Well, Stephanie, that's me. So if you've got errors or issues that you need cleanup assistance for, I'm your guy. So feel free to email me. My email is alex@aplos.com. Super long and complicated, I know, just alex@aplos.com. Send me an email and tell me what's going on. Just explain the issue, tell me how I can help, and then we'll get you squared away and get you situated. All right. And that goes for anybody else too. If you need services, feel free to just email me, alex@aplos.com. Let's see. When will Aplos have addresses connected to the donors when pulling reports? You spent a lot of time with copy and paste in Excel. Yep. Yeah, that is something that we're hoping to have done by the end of the year there, Juliana. And we may have said that before, but we're serious this time. That report there, the contribution statements will have the addresses, but what I'm guessing you're looking for is the donations by contact report that shows name and donations. And right now it shows name, donations, as well as what purpose and date and comment, but you want to see their addresses on there. That is totally understandable and something that we've been meaning to do for a long time. So we are ending a development cycle right now with our bank integration module and some other kind of accounting cleanup things. And then as we look towards the end of the year, there is some stuff we want to get done by the end of the year, that being one of them. So you should see that from us here pretty soon. Do all churches have to file the 990? No, churches are exempt because you are a religious institution. So the churches do not need to file the Form 990. Yeah. Let's see. Well, shoot, those are all the questions, actually. I thought there were more than that. It's just some thank yous and random things. So, again, we've got some time here. We've got, maybe about 10 minutes. So if you have any other questions or, anything you need help with, feel free to put that into the question field. Why don't I tell you what, I'm going to mute myself for just a minute. I'm going to see if I can find that internal control thing for you here real quick. And I'll get back to you here in a second with the other questions. I'll be right back. Okay, real quick note, I'm probably breaking some sort of rule here and by presenting you with information that is not complete, but I did find an ebook here on our internal controls. This was something that Tim wrote a long time ago and that I don't think was ever finished, but it might help in the meantime. So I put it in the handouts section of our GoToWebinar thing. So if you can download that, feel free. Now, disclaimer, I would not take this as absolute fact just because it hasn't been finished, but it might give you some sort of idea on things you can keep up to date with. Again, Google's going to be your best friend here and just making sure that you've got things rounded out, but hopefully that resource helps. And we might have to just finish that so that it's it's presentable for people. But hopefully that helps for you. Let me know if it doesn't. And if it's absolutely not helpful, let me know so that way I can never give it to people again. Let's see. Can you import data from QuickBooks? I just converted to Aplos about 2 months ago. Yeah, good question, Kay. So the answer is yes. Couple different ways we can go about that. We have an import path written code-wise from QuickBooks so that you can run a couple of reports and we can just import them. I don't recommend that, and that's not a flaw of our system or QuickBooks' system. It simply boils down to we do things differently than QuickBooks. They do not have fund accounting, and we do. And they require you to do some accounting workarounds that we do not. And it just translates weird sometimes. I make the joke a lot of the times that it's kind of like when I was in high school and I wanted to cheat on my Spanish homework. And I would go to the internet and I'd type in a paragraph in English and then have it spit it out in Spanish and then turn that in for homework. My Spanish teacher would look at me and say, I have no idea what this is. This is not Spanish. But good try. Thanks for trying to cheat. That is kind of similar to what happens with importing from QuickBooks. If it's simple, if you don't do anything super complicated in QuickBooks, it could come through just fine. But if you've got multiple years of data in there and maybe your accounting structure is unique, it might not translate very well. So the short answer is yes, we can absolutely dump that in there for you. If you've been using Aplos for a couple of months, we would want to be sensitive to what you've done already because importing from QuickBooks will delete anything that you've got currently in your account. So we wouldn't want to, remove 2 months worth of work, but it's possible. Another option here is we've got our professional services. So that is something that we actually call migration. And what that involves is we would take your QuickBooks data, we would take your Aplos account and we would merge one into the other, but in a more detailed fashion. So kind of my goal with importing from QuickBooks or any other software is to get the data in there. So make sure that the income statement and the balance sheets and everything is accurate when compared with your historic QuickBooks numbers and or where you need to end up overall. But it's a little bit more handheld of a process. So it's not just a straight data dump. We will import the data, but then we'll also make sure that everything matches on your reports. We'll make sure that, the accounting structure makes sense. And that if you've done some workarounds with, maybe creating multiple asset accounts to represent you keeping money separately because of a lack of fund accounting structure. I might just be speaking Greek at the moment, but there's a number of things that you could have done in QuickBooks that just might translate weird in Aplos. So that is something that we do. We'll take that and make it a very, very guided process instead of just putting it in there. But we can also just put it in there if you want as well. It's just can't guarantee the accuracy or the reliability of the data. It's probably a lot longer of an answer than you expected there, Kay, but hopefully it helped. Again, if you want to talk more about the migration stuff or some sort of service, just email me at alex@aplos.com. Alrighty. Well, I don't see any other questions, and we are rounding the 11 o'clock hour here, so I'm going to go ahead and just stop for the day. But I want to thank you all for taking the time to show up. I know that this subject can be quite intimidating if you're new to closing out a year, but hopefully this information was helpful and that it seems a little bit more manageable now. If you have any questions or anything that you need help with, feel free to email us. If you just need help or in general questions, feel free to email support@aplos.com. Or if you need something specific to some sort of service, whether it be monthly bookkeeping, catch-up, migration, anything like that, email me at alex@aplos.com and we will get you squared away. Alrighty, thank you again for your time and have a good rest of the year. Talk to you soon.